Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. I hope you're all doing really well out there. So today we are going to be looking at a knife from Arkona knives, which I'm not really sure how how big or how prolific this company is. And I apologize, it's got a very shiny, satiny blade. We're going to have some reflection issues here, I think, during the review, so just bear with me on that. But yeah, I picked this knife up from Levon over there at Knife Nuts Podcast. Very interesting knife. I think they were sort of the exclusive official launcher, so to speak, of this knife, and was able to get my hands on it. Really interesting knife. This definitely has a few things going on that I think it's kind of a mix of things it's got going on, which I think are, but they're all kind of knitted together pretty well to make it pretty darn good knife, actually, especially for its size. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get into that. So let's talk about some specs on this knife. We'll do a few size comparisons, and then we'll go ahead and get our classic mild-mannered review underway. All right, so maybe a couple other little notes real quick first, though. So $85 for this knife. And again, I don't know how widely available it's going to be sort of in the future. I think as of now, these are sold out on the Knife Nuts podcast website, but that could change. Anyways, whatever. I don't have a ton of information there. I may ask, I may follow up with them, and if I get any additional information, I'll pin it down in the comments. So there you go. All right, now this is also a design by Ivan Braganets. I'm sure I'm not saying his name right. You can see his maker's mark, if I don't get the shadow, there. There you go. He is a Russian knife designer, if I am correct. So there you go. All right, let's go ahead and get stuck in on this, shall we? Some specs on this Arkona Nettle F. It has a blade length here of 3.5 inches, a reflective blade length of 3.5 inches, a handle length when it's closed up here of 4.57 inches, a blade thickness, there we go, of 0.12 inches, and an overall tip to tail when it's all opened up of 8.07 inches with a weight of 3.46 ounces. And this knife is actually surprisingly light for its size. It's a much bigger knife kind of in person than it seems in pictures, or than maybe I even expected, but it's surprisingly nice to carry because of that lightweight nature, as well as some of the other things they did design wise. So yeah, there you go. All right, how about a couple of size comparisons with this Arkona?
Yes, definitely.
Rat number one, Spidey Rat here, so you can definitely see it's in Spidey Rat or Ontario Rat territory. Rat number one. Here's a CJRB with a very dirty blade, feldspar. There you go. So yeah, you can see, it's definitely on the bigger side, 3.5, inches in that blade, which is which is the legal limit here in the state that I live in. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. So, all right. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get underway with our classic mild-mannered review. And when we do that, we will talk action. Well, we'll talk blade, we'll talk action, then scales and hardware, and then ergos and carry. And then maybe some finishing thoughts if I have any, which I'm sure by then you'll all be far too tired to want to listen to any of that. So let's go ahead and get underway with this blade. Very, very cool blade. A couple things have struck me on this blade. And again, I'm sorry about the reflectiveness of this. It's a little frustrating. I don't really know what to do. I tried to mess around with my cameras, but couldn't quite get it.
You're the reason this species is a failure, and it makes me angry.
But needless to say, it's a very shiny satin finish on this K110 steel flat ground blade. And it really is very, very nicely done. Not only is it a very kind of attractive, kind of classic drop pointy, although if you can't kind of tell, but sort of as you follow this swedge down, as you get right to this point, it kind of drops a bit more. So I don't know if it's a drop like a drop squared in terms of it as a drop point, but yeah, it's a neat little touch. I like that. It kind of reminds me of the Kaiser Begleiter. Also has a bit of a secondary drop in the drop point like that. You can see very smudgy. Maybe if I smudge it up, that'll help with reflection. I don't know. So yeah, very, very nice blade. Really tall flat grind, and boy, it comes down to a really, really keen edge. I think on the website, the specs, it was like, I want to say it was like, 0.14 or something like that. behind the edge. Very, very thin and slicey. And I can tell you this is a really, really good slicer. And because K110 is essentially D2, you're going to get a long life kind of out of that edge. But again, it's D2 essentially. So you're going to have to monitor it a bit in terms of, oh, those smudges are bothering me. I'm going to clean this off real quick. So you might want to hit it with some EDCI or something like that, just to make sure you're not taking a trip to Rust Town there. So anyways, like I said, between the swedge, the blade, the really, really keen edge, the grind is beautiful. It's not only thin and slicey, as I mentioned, but it's very even, both sides. And that, as I think I've said in videos before, it's something I'm looking more and more at as I'm getting pickier and pickier about the knives I'm taking in. Really nailed the sharpening choil there. This is not a finger choil, definitely a sharpening choil out in front of the plunge line there. It just, yeah, very, very well done. It does have this little bit of I guess it is an opening hole, and we'll talk about that in action, but it is nicely chamfered along with this jimping up on top, which is actually a really pleasant jimping and is also nicely chamfered. Unfortunately, while that is all nicely chamfered, this spine, the edges of the spine, are not as nicely chamfered. Now, and I don't know if that's just because they wanted that really crispy kind of look to it, and really well defined sort of spine look, very squared off. But as I will show you the test here that I always do, yep, that's fingernail, right? And if you can scrape your fingernail off like that with the edge of the spine of a blade, usually in my book, it means it needs some chamfering. You could easily knock that down with a ceramic stone or something like that, but just be aware that might bother you a little bit. Bothers me a little bit, not a ton, but it is there. Something I wanted to mention. So there you go. Okay, so that pretty much wraps us up with blade. So let's talk about action. And so front flipper, big front flipper, as it happens. This is as I mentioned, a relatively large knife running on ceramic ball bearings. It is a liner lock. There you go. Look at that. It flips open with significant authority and is really excellently dialed in for a front flipper. Now, front flippers are going to traditionally maybe be a little softer on the detent, just so, just to make life a bit easier when you're flipping it. But this has a really pleasing front flipping action. They did a real nice job with not only how much space they're keeping up above the pivot, but also just sort of the angle of the blade here, or the sort of flipper portion of the blade, and this little cutout here, so that basically as you're doing this, you're doing it so fast you don't really notice, but as you're doing it, your thumb sort of stays in contact with that blade kind of all the way through, really ensuring, can't really do it in slow motion, but really ensuring you get that solid, accurate flip every time. And it really is accurate and authoritative just about every time. Not to mention the closing action, also very, very satisfying.
I like it a lot.
So, I have to give them really good marks here in terms of action. I've enjoyed this as, not only just a tool to carry around and a knife to use and flip open, but also as a bit fidgety. This is one that, sitting in the car or sitting on the couch, yeah, really a fun knife to sort of fidget with. You can open this with your thumb, like sort of a thumb roll, although I find it's not ideal for the slow thumb roll, but if you do kind of a, as he fails it, there you go. If you really dig in, you can kind of flip it out there with your thumb as well. I have not been able to do any sort of spidey flick on this. It's just there's just not enough room for my, I can get it kind of out, but I can't quite get it all the way open. Oh, there you go. I did it for my Shrek-like fingers, but it's not something I'm doing with much, ease. So I don't know. It's definitely primarily a front flipper. So just be mindful of that if this is something you end up looking like you want to pick up. So came very centered, remains centered, no blade play, no blade rock, anything like that. Just, yeah, nicely done in terms of action. I've been very, very pleased with it. The liner lock is well done. There's nice access to in fact, it's almost, I think it's, really nice access here to this liner lock. And I like how they sort of thinned out the liner lock and added a little bit of nuance there. And again, nicely chamfered. They just kind of missed it up here. But yeah, everything, yeah, well done. Very well done. So that's what we have for action. Now let's talk a little bit about materials, scales, and hardware, because I think this is where this knife is a little bit interesting in some ways. So one, you've got sort of three main pieces of hardware on each side. Obviously the first being the pivot. I like that. It's symmetrical and it keeps, I don't know, it just kind of looks cool. But you also notice these are flathead, right? These aren't Torx. So you'll be using a flathead to, adjust these screws if you're disassembling the knife or adjusting the pivot. So bear that in mind. Maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But I think overall it's kind of interesting, a little bit different. You see so much Torx these days. I don't know, just kind of funny. So there you go. As in terms of the scales, you've got this layered micarta, which is done very nice, actually. And when I first got it, I was kind of like, oh, do I like this? Do I not like this? As I've had it, it feels really nice in hand. As you can see, it's even milled a bit. And again, I think I just recently reviewed the Kaiser Quatch, and that too had milled micarta. And milling micarta is not the simplest thing. You can get a little bit of a ragged edge in some spots, and you can see that a little bit here with some fraying. But it's sort of like an old worn pair of jeans, right? You sort of get that sort of, I don't know, worn look, aged look, something like that a little bit. It doesn't bother me. And in fact, I've kind of liked it more and more as I've had it. So really nicely done with the micarta, obviously this one with black and blue. Now you have a pretty much full aluminum backspacer, anodized blue there. Very pretty, very nice. The attention to detail with, for example, these grooves, I think, looks great, matches up, kind of pulls the knife together front and back, along with the jimping here on the blade. So I thought they did a really nice job there. You do have a lanyard hole there, and you also seem to have a sort of weird additional way to get the lanyard. You could maybe have lanyard come out this way, or I'm not sure exactly what they were going for with this. It was sort of like two options or something for a lanyard. So I don't know. It's a little weird. I might have preferred this hole not being there and just having access, for lanyard folks right there. I'm not a lanyard person, so there you go. And then you have a stainless steel clip, which is actually held on with Torx, so you will need two tools, a flathead and Torx to do this. They are T6. I did take them off. In fact, I took them off with my Civivi key bit, which is no stop held design. And I'll have a review coming on about that shortly. But anyways, there you go. And then inside, what do we got here? Some very highly milled, obviously it's going to have liners on one side because it's a liner lock, but really heavily milled stainless steel liners inside, making this, again, I think really helping it stay, at least under that ounce an inch, if not only barely, but still there. But just overall for, like I said, its size, feeling nice and lightweight. So there you go. Okay, now that brings us to Ergos and Carry. I think the ergos on this are actually fantastic. That's actually what I wrote in my notes here that I keep. The ergos are great. And I wrote that because they are. It just feels great in hand. This, little bit here for your forefinger to sort of lock into, because it's such a nice handle. And again, it's a pretty darn, see if I can show you here. I don't know if I can. It's a pretty darn well-balanced knife. And that makes a difference. It makes a difference to how it feels in hand and when you're using it, if you don't, just to have something sort of right in the center of the knife. So yeah, even though you don't have really an ability to choke up on this knife, I guess you do a little bit if you put your thumb up here, but you don't really feel like you need it because of the balance. So just really, really well done. And the ergos are, for me, great. I know ergos are very subjective, but I don't get any hot spots off this clip or anything like that. And speaking of clip, again, you've got a deep carry pocket clip here, so when this is in your pocket, it's nothing really is showing. Maybe just the top of these Torx screws popping up a little bit. Maybe doing those in a recessed way would have been a nice touch. But again, $85. Yeah, I'm not going to nitpick too much on that. But that would have made it fully deep carry. Maybe future iterations, they make that adjustment. But what I will say, speaking of adjusting, is you are able to adjust this clip. And again, I took it off. You pop these out and you just spin it around, pop them back in, and then you have a left-right carry ambi clip, which is very nice. Well done. I appreciate that attention to detail. Again, on a knife that isn't super expensive. So it's not cheap. 85 bucks isn't cheap, but it's not, it's a corner they could have cut and they didn't, and I appreciate that. So I wanted to mention it. So, and as I said, carries in pocket, you've got nice spring tension here with the clip, and yeah, it's just ergos and carry are very, very nice. So overall, I actually really like this knife. It's not one that I was 100% sure if I was going to like it. I like the way it looks. I was intrigued by the front flipping action, or just being a front flipper in general. I'm giving it the thumbs up though.
Thumbs up!
And in fact, I think I'm willing to give this a designation I don't give out very often on the channel. And that is a mild-mannered masterpiece. Not because this is the most beautiful or perfect knife ever made, but I think for what they've done for $85 is really, they've done a nice job. They've really, really pulled this knife together in a way that I think, you know, apart from a couple nitpicks here and there, I think the jimping is probably, or the chamfering is probably my biggest. But other than that, yeah, I have to say, I like this knife a lot, and I think it's pretty darn neat. Now, I'm going to send this down the way to Stuff We Do, another great knife channel. He's based out of South Africa. Go check him out. I'm going to send this down to him. It may take like 6 months for it to actually get there, but eventually, hopefully he can check it out and look at it, and I'm sure I'll probably miss it in the time that it's gone. So anyways, that's the review here on the Arkona Nettle F. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think it's a really neat knife, and I hope there's going to be more opportunity for others to pick it up, because I think it's one that a lot of folks would like. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please give the video a like if you have. Maybe consider subscribing to the channel. It really does mean a lot. But more importantly, stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.